From the top of the table now, we're going to the bottom. Uh, Technically, we only have one team mathematically eliminated, that being Vancouver FC. But after the results on the weekend, with Valor and Pacific both losing 3-0, I think we've got a pretty strong idea of who our top. I mean, we've had a pretty strong idea of who our top five is for a while now, but both teams would essentially need miracles to get into that top five. So I think this is a good moment in the season to kind of take a look at the clubs that aren't going to be joining us in the postseason and maybe think about what went wrong. We'll kind of finish with Vancouver because obviously there's quite an interesting wrinkle in there, knowing that they're going to play in a Canadian Championship final, which is truly impressive and remarkable. And then they've just had a magical run in that cup. But let's start with Pacific. Okay, they lose 3-0 in Halifax. Kind of the story of the season in a lot of ways again for them, in the sense that they're right in there in the first half. They're doing pretty well, can't find a goal, and then it falls apart in the second half after halftime. Now, for me, when I look at Pacific, I look at the stats. They don't have a single player with more than 5 goal contributions, goals plus assists. And that player at the top of the list is Ali Ndam, who's a center back. He's their leading scorer with 5 goals. And for me, that's just maybe the story of the season for them, is that they don't score enough goals. The other thing is they're conceding at really difficult moments of games. They've scored, or 65% of the goals they've conceded have come in the second half. I think it's like 22 of the 46 in total have come in the last half hour of games. And the other thing is that they're not nearly as strong at defending set pieces as they were a year ago. Last year, best team in the league, conceded just 9 times from set pieces. This year, it's already 18, the most in the Canadian Premier League. AGR, we'll come back to you here because you've obviously watched a lot of Pacific this year. Is this kind of it? Is this kind of the story of Pacific season? What do you think has gone wrong for them this year?
Yeah, it's unique because they've obviously had a lot not go their way, right? Like the injuries, I think, are the biggest one. So early in the season, you lose Ronan Kratt, who looked to be a bit of a difference maker, and then you lose Juan Quintana. I think that might have been the biggest loss, just because all of a sudden with Juan Quintana, you have to throw maybe Ali Ndam a bit deeper, when in reality, with how good he's been, you wonder what he could have looked like a little higher up the pitch as a number 6, or you might imagine what Ndam and Quintana could have done together as center backs. And then it's just been dominoes from there. And even though they obviously made some big additions, Marco Bustos, Caden Chung returning home, eventually they make Alejandro Diaz, they come back. It just feels like they've been quite imbalanced all season long, and they've lacked enough game-breaking talent at one end, but also, they've asked a lot from a guy like Ndam, and around him it's chopped and changed a lot. With center back partners, just the overall back line. They've also really struggled in midfield to get any consistency because of injuries. Because, Lucas Browning and Daniel DePauli have been in and out the lineup all year long. Sean Young as well has dealt with injuries. So, yeah, it's really a multitude of factors. What's interesting with Pacific is that there's clearly fight there, which you always wonder with a team in their position. Like, they're second in the league in terms of recovered points, but that also tells you where they struggled, because the Pacific of the last few years especially, they really had a lot of success of scoring first and winning these ugly 1-0, 2-1 games. And this year they haven't had the chance to do that a lot because they've trailed in a lot of games, and somehow, to their credit, they've gotten a lot of points out of those games where they've trailed, and really that stands out and something they'll want to look forward to, because this specific team, their identity is really playing from the front, playing on the front foot. And this entire season has been on the back foot. So when it comes to this offseason, looking for ways to rectify and to be a more dynamic team from the start seems to be the big priority.
Just quickly on Pacific, and this is kind of a multi-year point. Sometimes football is pretty simple, and it seems like year after year, Pacific lose more than they gain in the transfer window in terms of the players that they lost this past year. TMG, Dyer, Gazdoff, Dadaluk all leaving. Aparicio, Didic the year before. All the guys they lost after that 2021 title. Bustos, Diaz leaving. Obviously, they came back this year, but it just kind of feels like every year they're unable to retain those kind of key core guys that have, pushed the team on, and the players that they bring in, the recruitment isn't able to match that up, and I think that's why we've kind of seen year by year kind of that steady decline into where this point they're no longer even a playoff team in the Canadian Premier League.
Yeah, it's a frustrating time to be Pacific FC. It's looking like almost mathematically the first time since year one of the Canadian Premier League that they're not going to be in the playoffs in any form. Frustrating one for Pacific. Likewise, a frustrating one, though, for Valor, who find themselves near the bottom of the table again. And again, for me, it seems like it might be too little too late. 8 points in their first 14 games. They've got, I think it's 14 in their last 10 since the first half of the season. But, at the point that they've started to turn it around, they're just too far out of the playoff spots. AGR, again with you, what is the issue at Valor? What has been most frustrating for you watching them, and why are we not going to see them in the playoffs?
Yeah, I think what's interesting with them is they're the most volatile team, I think, in the Canadian Premier League. And I think that's really what hurts them is when you compare the three last place teams, feels like they had the highest of highs, but then they'd have the lowest of lows. Like you'd have a good win at home against a Cavalry, and you're like, okay, like this Valor team maybe is turning the corner in midsummer and things are figuring out. And then they've just some of the heavy losses they also would then suffer, like 4-0 or 4-1, I guess, away to Halifax. I think those couple 5-0s Forge handed to them. Like there was just also these lows where they were conceding some awful goals. They just couldn't figure anything out in front of goal. And really I think that consistency makes such a big difference for a playoff team of, okay, can you make sure your lows don't get too low and you're still okay when you're having a bad day? It's not 5-0, maybe it's a 1-1, and you look back and down the road. Okay, that draw kept the team in front of us a little closer, kept them a little closer to the team in front of you, right? And I think they've had a lot of just moments where the downs would hit them, and it would pile up over a week or 2 weeks, and then they would find some good form and be like, okay, there's something about this Valor team. And I guess to that point, we talk about Pacific lacking game-breaking talent. I think you could copy-paste and put that for Valor. The fact, the matter is their leading scorer has 4 goals, and that's because Miles Morgan had that hat trick and found a bit of form. Other than that, and that kind of came a bit later in the season as a U21 player who had to be eased in to action. They just didn't have a lot of game-breaking talent. Who is going to be that number 9? Who is going to be the guy who scores the goals in a year where pretty much everyone has a number 9? Valor struggled to find one until it was too late, because I think Morgan has, to his credit, stepped up and filled that hole in his way. So definitely game-breaking talent is also another one. I think that's kind of a theme, right? When you look at a lot of the teams in the top 5, they've got guys who can win you games, and at the bottom 3, that can be a big difference maker, because there's not a lot that splits 8-1. Like you see it, like you put Vancouver up against Forge and Ottawa, it's not going to be an uncompetitive game. Vancouver just beat one of them in the Can Champ final or in the Can Champ semifinals, but obviously there's little things that split them.
Yeah, that definitely the frustrating thing for Valor. Like you have those big moments, but they don't kind of capitalize on momentum, and then just at the end of the day, it's just another frustrating Valor season. We'll wrap up very quickly here with Vancouver, though, a team that we will get into much more depth on next week, obviously, because they're in the Canadian Championship final. But Mitch, obviously, they've been eliminated from playoff contention for, I think, a couple of weeks now. But of the 3 teams at the bottom of the table, may end up being the happiest come the end of the season. How do you look at this season as a whole if you're Vancouver FC? Even if you lose the Canadian Championship final, I mean, I think that will be a very challenging game, and I think a lot of people wouldn't expect them to beat the Whitecaps, but not a lot of people expected them to get to the final in the first place. If you're Vancouver FC about a month and a half from now, and you're looking back, what do you make of this season? Coaching change, cup run, bottom of the table, like it's a lot.
I think it's clear they have something there. Like there's a lot of individual and solid talents that they've been able to recruit.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like you still can't discount what they've done over the majority of this season which has been disappointing and below the standard that they obviously want to set. So it's kind of, yeah, in some ways there are those positives, and you can tell that there is something here. There's some great players. There's, some cohesion, and they can get, obviously deliver some amazing performances on their day. But yeah, over the course of their history, like, we still don't entirely know game to game what the identity of this team is. There's been way too much turnover player to player, and it seems like that's every season. Like the Vancouver FC team that starts a year is rarely the Vancouver FC team that ends a year on the pitch, in terms of how they play. So that's the big goal this offseason is, you have to try and retain as much of these key talents that have helped you to this point, and then find better complementary players to, whether that's within the league or outside the league. Because you want to talk about random international recruitment, like, it's been pretty hit or miss for them. Certainly, you have guys like Nicholas Mosquita, and then you have other guys who you bring in, and I know visas have been issues, but we barely ever see before they're departing the club again. So I think that's a big goal, but obviously at the end of the day, you're in a national final, so you have to take that as a momentum as a club. You have to build on that, and you have to celebrate that, because it's not every day. It's the first time a CPL club's done it in this fashion.
Absolutely.
So they have to absolutely, take that as a moment of pride for the club.
Hey man, if Vancouver FC qualify for the CONCACAF Champions Cup, to which there is a very serious path for them, even if they lose that final, then I think that recruitment actually gets a little bit easier in this offseason.
And retention too.
And retention, that's right.